Hey guys, and welcome back to the Farthest Frontier Let's Play here on my channel. Now, I've done a few things off camera, but this was actually an accident. I thought I was recording, but it turns out my mic wasn't picking up the audio, so yeah, a pretty derpy mistake, but I make a lot of them. If you're new here, you'll get used to that. So I only did a few things though. It was only a few minutes before I noticed, which was very lucky. It could have been worse, it could have been hours, and let me run you through what happened while you were gone. So I was a little concerned about the food and decided to build myself a second fishing shack right here. Now you'll see where I've put the work area here, and I purposely built the fishing shack in this area to maximize the amount of fish that we can get. You'll see if I click this to move the area, if you put it on like a straight bit of fish right here, you don't get as much fish. And this isn't as big a deal when you have the fishing icon and you've got the shoulder fish nearby where you get the extra resource, but we don't have that in this location. So you can see on the straight bit, we've got like roughly this many, but once we start moving that into the corner, then you can see how many extra fish we're going to get. Now at the bottom of the screen there, you'll see it says fishing resources. So right here, you've got 10 fishing areas, which is plus 20%. The fish count is 309 and the productivity is 120. Now if we compare that to the corner over here, our productivity has gone up to 190%. That is really high. We've got the 17 fishing areas, which is plus 90%, and a fish count of 309. So the fish count has stayed the same, but our productivity is so much higher and our fishing areas is so much higher. So it looks like this is a sweet spot. You can see there fishing productivity 200% with 18 fishing areas at plus 100%. We go ahead and left click there, and you can use that as the gauge as to where to set your fishing area for your fishing shack. Now towards the end of episode 1, we built a couple things. One of them is this right here, which is our graveyard. Now you'll notice on the graveyard GUI, there is no option to move or destroy the graveyard. So once it's built, it's going to be there for the rest of your game. This was something I found out in between episodes and wanted to share with you guys so that you know if you build your graveyard, you want to build it somewhere that you're pretty happy with because it ain't moving. Now, I'm not sure I would have built mine right here if I'd known that, but that's why I'm telling you guys today so you don't make the same mistake that I did. Another thing I built, which I do recommend early on, is one of these things right here, which is a root cellar. So if you go to buildings and up to storage, then the root cellar is this one right here. And as it says here, it will store food at a reliable temperature and just reduce the rate at which food is spoiled in your town. And of course, this is as important as finding new food. Stopping food from spoiling is going to be a great way to make sure your citizens have got more food, which is obviously very important, especially in the early game when it can be a bit of a struggle. So it's always worth checking the things on storage because different storage areas store different things. So the root cellar will store food, but it won't store the raw building materials. Those are stored in this one right here, which is the stockyard. And then you'll also have things like a storehouse, which can store everything. However, if you have a storehouse, although it will store food, it will spoil much quicker than the root cellar. So it's better to prioritize things and have things that you need for specific areas. As far as location goes, I've purposely built mine near my houses and near my center of my town. So as food is coming in, it's got the shortest distance to go before it is stored safely. And then as food is moved from the storehouse to the houses, again, the commute time is as low as it can be whilst keeping a good average between the other resources. I've also started work on this building right here. This is a compost yard and something I recommend you build early on into your game. The reason for this is let's go to the building menu right here, and it is under resources and compost right there. So as it says here, the compost yard, they will basically collect human and animal waste. So at the moment, we're more worried about the human waste. Basically, they will go to the housing area here and take the human waste away from these houses and to the compost yard. This does many things for us. It actually keeps our citizens happier and healthier, whilst also reducing the rat population. Further to that, the compost yard will over time, and it does take a little while, but it will eventually turn into fertilizer that can be used on your farms. When you want to build a compost yard, you'll see it can reduce desirability quite a lot. So that's why I put mine here. This was as close as I could get to the town while it was still at 0%. You'll see if I go just one further to the right, it goes down to -8, but it's also close to the farm. So again, you want to try and keep it somewhere in between the houses and near the farms, but without it reducing the desirability whenever possible. And the reason I like that to be done early in the game is because it does take a while for the human waste to convert into fertilizers. So that can just be working in the background whilst we're getting on with other things. We also built this farm here at the end of the last episode. Of course, we fenced it off to protect it from the animals. And if we click the farm right here, we can see the stats. So right now, these statistics are not fantastic. You can see that our weed level and our rockiness is still a fair bit higher than what I would want it to be. So I'm going to start planning ahead for the new year because as you can see from the timeline here, we are starting to go through the winter and we'll have to start planning this pretty soon. So I'm going to go ahead to year 2 here and get some farm work done just to reduce the weeds and rocks, which will eventually make for a better harvest when we do harvest something. I think it's a good idea because at this stage, we're not desperate for food. Like we're doing okay for food and we've just put in the root cellar, so that should help. As for the crop I'm going to grow, I'm going to stick with beans. There's a few reasons for this. First of all, they have a fantastic heat tolerance. And you can see when we click them that these are going to be going on all through the warmer months because we're doing the hoeing there in the winter, and by the time they're grown, it's not quite long enough that we're into the next winter. Secondly, the beans actually improve the fertility of the site. So they're a great one to start off with because they're going to add the fertility so future harvests will be better. They also have a reasonable crop yield, so we'll get a decent amount of food from them, and they can be stored for quite a long long time. So there we go. We've added in those beans and getting a bit of work done on the farm first, and then we'll sort of see how that goes, and I'll keep you guys updated. So I believe that was just about everything I did off camera, and we got to the stage right here where we've got this upgrade icon. So this means our town center can now be upgraded. You'll see here we meet all the requirements and we have the materials. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's hit the upgrade button, and then we can start progressing our town on to tier 2. I will make one note at this point that you don't want to upgrade your town too quickly. So just because the icon's there, of course, you don't have to upgrade. It just means that is available to you. Now, especially if you're playing with combat turned on, once you start to upgrade, you're going to have a lot more raids and a lot more defending of your town to do. So I recommend you're in a good place before you upgrade. You've got a town that's pretty happy, that's doing okay for food, and that you've got a lot of the buildings built that are going to help you out. Things like the Fletcher, the cobbler, the tannery, and things like that. As we're playing on pacifist mode, this isn't as important to us because we're not going to be attacked. We just have to make sure we keep people happy and well fed. But obviously people play on different modes, and I just thought it was worth a quick mention. Now I've decided to change my mind slightly here. I'm going to just click this button right here so that construction's no longer enabled. Now by doing that, I can just have this sort of paused and build a few other things first. And the reason for that is the tier 1 buildings are still useful to us, and I want to get our productivity up just a little bit before we advance into tier 2. So we're going to build a tannery, and you'll see if you build this near houses, this will impact the desirability. And basically your houses, they don't want to be near the tannery, so we don't want it to be there. So we're going to find a good place for it to go. So I've been playing around with this a little bit, and it's kind of hard to find a good location for it. But if I build it right here, you'll see that is a 6% desirability. So it's not fantastic, but it's at least better than the high negative numbers I was getting in a lot of other places. Now by building it here, it's near the hunter's hut as well, which is the materials that it uses to basically make up its clothing. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to run a road just out here like this as well. So this will connect things up a little bit. And I think that's probably the best average place we can put it. So I'm going to speed through things a little bit now to start getting some stuff done. So they're working on the tannery. The compost heap has been done. Here goes the guy with his wheelbarrow. So he's off to collect all the, well, basically poo and go put it in here. You'll see the composter, it has the collecting stat right here, and then it will move on to fertilizer and things like that later, which I'll show you guys once that's happened. Do bear in mind the composter does take 4 gold per month for upkeep. So you don't want to like build too many of them, and you don't want to build it before you've got like a decent amount of gold coming in. Okay, whilst they're working on the tannery right here, let's get a couple other things planned out as well. I like to make one of these, which is a basket shop, because this is going to improve the productivity of our workers. And I'm going to keep that really central for now, because obviously all the workers are going to need it. So if it's central, it's probably a good place for it. I also want to make one of these right here, which is a cobbler's. So villagers, once they've got shoes from the cobbler, they'll be walking faster, so they can work faster. And also they'll get injured less often. So it's going to be less strain on our healthcare system once that is in place. Again, I'm going to place that nice and central so everyone can get their shoes nice and easily. Now, when you first build a building, sometimes you might get an icon like this, and it's saying that there's no well nearby. It doesn't have any water. But as you saw there, this icon disappeared as soon as these two turned up. So they sometimes have to take a moment to go and fetch the water. As such, you don't necessarily need to build a well right away. Just keep an eye on it. And if it doesn't go away after a long time, then sure, you might need to build one. But chances are they're just fetching the water. Another thing with the farms, make sure to click on your crops here and make sure you've got this right here, which is the plus 10% yield bonus where possible. If not, you can change the sand and clay levels to get your target soil bonus like higher up and get that 10% bonus. I have made a full crop farming guide on my channel. If you want to see the tutorial of that, you can check that out, and I go into farming in much more depth. Now, just pausing for a second to look at our food, which is my main focus right now, you'll see we have 10 food, and the number in brackets is how much has spoiled. So unfortunately, 5 months of food has spoiled in the last 12 months. Now, if we left click the food, it'll bring up this tab right here, and then we can see what's going on. So here we can see that protein is spoiling a little, and if we click on that, then it will open up this tab right here, and we can see that fish are the things that are spoiling the most. So given that there's no meat spoiling and there is a little bit of fish spoiling, what you might want to do is come into your smokehouse here and just change the ratios. So I might put a 2:1 here for fish. That way more fish is going to be smoked and hopefully less of it will spoil. So I'm going to do that and see what happens, but this should help us out. Now, the other thing that's really spoiling a lot here, as you can see, is the fruit and the vegetables. Now, we have built this root cellar right here, and we are still in tier 1 as well. So there's only a limited amount of things we can do to prevent this. But I'm just going to keep an eye on it over the next 12 months and see if this root cellar helps, because it's quite new. It hasn't had long enough to maybe take effect yet, but just something for us to keep an eye on. Now, this little tab right here at the bottom of the screen is resources in storage. And if we click that, it will pull up everything we have here. So I've got a basket maker being made, but you'll see that if I look through here, I've not been collecting any willow yet. So none of my forages are in areas where there's willow to collect. As such, that's something we want to rectify pretty quickly. Otherwise, there's basically no point in having the basket shop. So I've seen just here, we've got this willow bush here. We've got some herbs and we've got eggs and stuff nearby. And I'm going to build myself another forager's hut. So let's go ahead and place that down here. Obviously, this isn't a great work area because a lot of it's in the water. So once that's built, we'll definitely move that work area. And I'm going to prioritize this building because, as I say, the basket maker is going to be absolutely pointless until we've got some willow for them to actually collect and use to make the baskets. I've just noticed that we're at 37 out of 40 people. So I think it's also probably a good idea here to start looking at building in a few more houses. So we want to keep these houses within the zone of this marketplace, of course, and we still got some areas where we can do that. So let's go build and look at our housing here and just see where's good desirability wise. Okay, it looks like here's pretty good. We've got 17% here and 18% there, so we'll put a couple in there. And I'm going to go ahead and stick a couple in here as well. They've got 10%, which is reasonably good, and I don't think I'll use this area for anything else anyway, so we'll get those going on. Just want to make sure we've got plenty of space for new people to come in as long as we can support them, and with our food at the moment, I think we're heading in the right direction, so we probably can support them. And obviously, the more we grow, then we can get more people doing more things and collecting more resources. Okay, the forage shack has been built, so let's go ahead and move this work area, and let's put it, let's see, where's a good place for this? So I think around about here is going to be pretty good. We can collect a lot of resources this way and still be reasonably near to the town. Again, in the bottom here, when you're doing this, you can see like an indication as to, you know, how much of this area is going to be used and whether it's a good spot or not. And it looks like right here, 12.14, it's the highest percentage I've seen. So I'm going to click that right there. Then I'm going to go to the willow bush and click prioritize so that they can go ahead and get that willow first, and the baskets can be made. The baskets are important because with baskets, your citizens can carry more. So they're all going to be more productive once the baskets are in place. And that's just going to be really useful moving forwards. Now I'm noticing here that our planks are pretty low and our firewood is really high. So on the firewood right here, I could turn this person off if I wanted to. And I think I'm going to do that just for now. We'll have to add them back in later, but for now, let's get an extra laborer rather than just wasting our resources when we've got a lot of firewood already. I'm also going to go down here and click harvest, get rid of all of this stuff. So we're just harvesting trees and just get a few of these trees that are around here and just select a few more around the town as there doesn't seem there's many trees nearby. Now, all of these trees here, you see I've selected, they're quite little trees. I don't really want to harvest those. So I'm going to hit shift and drag again, and that will get rid of those. We don't want to harvest the little trees. Let's let them grow a bit more first, and let's just harvest the more mature trees that we can see around here. So there we go. Selected a few more over here, and that should be good to help us get a few more trees going on. So with that extra wood that's going to be coming in, another thing I'm going to do is go to my saw pits, and I might just add a third person in here as we do keep running low on these planks. It's not just now I'm worried about, it's more for the future as we upgrade to tier 2 and more buildings will require planks in order to be built. So at the moment, you can see here we've got 13 months of food in storage, and the number unfortunately is going up here with 7 months worth of food that is spoiling. So that is something we're definitely going to need to work on. However, with that and our happiness level being very good, as you see here, if we click to open this, everyone is really happy in just about all areas. And we also have 37 out of 56, which is plenty of room to expand our population. So all those things considered, I'm going to go back to my town hall and re-enable the construction here so we can upgrade to tier 2, and then we can get on with building some tier 2 buildings, which is pretty exciting. And we just got 7 new people in our town, as you can see in the top left. 5 people immigrated and 2 new people were born. It's pretty good timing. If I press P right now, you'll see that the number of laborers we have here is 14, and this number is in white, which means it is a good number. If this number is at red when you open yours, it means that the game is suggesting you should have some more laborers, so you might want to consider that and stop expanding quite so quickly. When I first started playing this game, expanding too fast was one of the things that I got wrong. It's very tempting. You want to keep expanding your town and get onto new buildings, and it's exciting and stuff, but if you do it too quickly, then you might come a bit unstuck in the long run. And just like that, town hall has been built. So let's just pause real quick here, and you can see there we go. The town center is now at level 2. We have a 97% happiness, which is fantastic, and everything is going just pretty good. So I'm really happy with how things are progressing, and I'm especially happy with 14 months of food with only 5 months spoilage. Again, we're going to work on getting that down, but now we've got the excitement of the tier 2 buildings, and we can see what we want to do. So one building I'm quite interested in is this right here, which is the apiary. It says here about how the apiary keeps beehives, which the villagers can harvest for honey. So honey obviously is a food source, but the good thing about honey is since the recent update, honey no longer spoils. So that's going to be a great thing to have in storage long term, and I think we want to get one of those built pretty quickly. So let's click that, and I think we want it to be near the farms because I believe I'm right in saying that it's the farmers that actually do the work for this. So over here looks pretty good. It's 72%. I'll see if we can improve on this, but that's pretty high. So it looks like to improve on it, we've got to go quite far out of the town, which I don't think is a good idea. I'd rather have it somewhere near these farming areas right here. So yeah, let's go ahead and chuck one of those down there. We need to press play here because we need our planks to improve before we can do that. But that's going to be a useful little building for us to have. Another building I'm keen to get into is the soap shop. I think it's good to get that done as early as possible because when they make soap, it will just mean your citizens are a bit cleaner. This will make them happier, and it will also improve their health, meaning that you'll have to spend less time worrying about the healer's house. So under amenities and services, you'll see you got the healer's house right here, which is going to be useful later. However, the monthly cost is 30 gold, which really is a lot. And it also costs 100 just to build it in the first place. So let's get the soap maker in, and then hopefully we don't have to bring in the healer anytime soon. Now I'm struggling to find anywhere that's decent for this place to go. I've got 3% desirability here. That seems to be the best I can get it. Okay, we're going to put it over here then. It's going to go right there. We got 3%, and yeah, unfortunately, as I say, that was as good as we could do. Now with the roads you've been building, if you go ahead and click on them at this stage, you can upgrade them. So this just means that people will walk a bit faster, and it can be a bit of a pain because you have to click on each bit of road here individually. There's no like upgrade all buttons. You have to just keep clicking on them and upgrading them. So for that reason, you may not want to do like every single road, but I think for the main roads around your town, the ones that are getting used most often, it's definitely something worth doing. So I'm going to go ahead and do a bit of a road upgrading process right here, and hopefully that'll stand us in good stead for the future. So just reevaluating our food right now. If we go back on here, we can see the spoilage, and if we go to protein, you'll see that the food that's spoiled right here, we got smoked meat that spoiled was 75, whereas the smoked fish is only at 19. So I think before it might have been a mistake to have changed that around in the way that I did. I'm going to put this back to a 1-to-1 ratio. That's probably better for us. So this will all depend for you if you're playing your own towns and things. Obviously you're going to do things slightly different to me, but just something to like keep an eye on each time. Now as we're approaching the end of the year, I just want to go ahead and look at my farm real quick and start making a plan for the next year coming. Our weed level and rockiness is still not something I'm overly happy with, and we're doing okay for food, so we're going to spend a bit of time hoeing the field first. And in fact, just to mix it up, I'm going to do 2 lots of hoeing, and then I'm going to go ahead and grow these peas right here. You see the peas have a fantastic frost tolerance, so growing them towards the end of the year is not going to be a problem. Once they're being harvested, if it's a little bit frosty, it shouldn't be an issue. I'm actually going to move that just like into here, so right towards the end of the year there for that food to come in. The other good thing about the peas is it says here that they can be stored for longer than other crops. So because of that, having them grown towards the end of the year means that for the winter of the next year, hopefully that'll keep us going through. So our apiary is up and running, but only very recently, so it's going to take some time before it is producing, but of course it will do that in a second. So what I want to do is build a candle shop, because that will use the apiary's wax, the beeswax that we get there, and make candles from that. And these can then be sold later on in our trading post when we build one of those, which is going to be pretty useful as just like have something we can sell as a bit of an income of gold. So I want that to be pretty central. I'm thinking if I place it here, it's pretty central, but also it's not too far from the apiary. So I think that's a good location for that one. Now, something I want to get built pretty quickly is if we go to the storage area right here, is one of these. This is a wagon shop. So you'll see there, it says basically that wagons will be built, and that means that villagers can quickly transport goods. So basically everything's going to be transported faster once we have one of these built. So that's going to stand us in good stead for the rest of the game. So that's why the sooner we build that, the better it's going to be. The only question now is where I want this to go, and I do want it to be reasonably central, but I think maybe just like somewhere around here is pretty good. That's going to be very close to the town center, as you can see here, and like the storage areas we have nearby. So I think that's a great location for that one. I think I'm going to go ahead and add a 4th person into our saw pit as well, just because we're doing quite well for wood, but our number of planks keeps dropping down. So we're definitely going to need a few more of those coming in, and that seems to be a good way to do that. Okay, I've just hit my population limit, 56 out of 56. So it's time once again to look at some houses here and rectify that. So I've just paused the game here and I've had a look at the market area, and I want to see where we can put houses in that are still going to be within this area of the market. So what I think I'm going to do is just get this road right here. I'm just going to get rid of that one really quickly. That way, when I build my house here, I can keep the grid pattern going that we had before. So let's just get that facing the right way. So it's facing the road and keep it in here. It's going to have good desirability, and then we can just move this over here like this and down to have access to the well. However, longer term, this marketplace is starting to fill its purpose, and we might need to look at getting a new one in. There's a couple places back here I could add houses in, which would work quite well, and I think I'll do that in just a second. But a lot of this is spilling out into the town center, so we may need to do that, and I might even dedicate an episode to that, or at least a good chunk of a future episode to that. Housing is obviously very important, and something that we can spend a lot of time talking about. But for now, we can get a couple in here. So you've got desirability there of 16. If we go down here, that's still on 16, so that's pretty good. Let's see if we can make it look a little nicer. So if I place it in like that, I think it just looks a bit more in line, because it's not quite in line, but it will just look a little better. And the citizens will walk through the areas between houses. You don't have to have roads between them. Leaving space between, we talked about in episode 1, is useful so we can build gardens and improve the desirability. But in terms of access to the houses, you don't have to have like roads or a clear area in between. They'll actually just be able to find their way in between these houses. Now I'm going to go ahead and prioritize the building of the wagon shop, because the sooner that's done, the better it's going to be for everybody. The other thing as well is the wagon shop. If we go to buildings and to resources, a lot of these are locked at the moment, and the wagon shop will unlock some of these, like the work camp, which will be really useful. And boom, there we go. We got the wagon shop going on, and we have one person working in there right now. Let's go and press P and see what we've got here. Right, we have 19 laborers. That is a lot. So what we're going to do is let's go back to the wagon shop. I'm going to add someone in there for sure. Instead, you can see here, this road has been upgraded, so it just looks a little bit nicer now. If I just run through here, you can see this is like the stone road, and then these are the dirt roads which haven't been upgraded. So the stone road definitely looks nicer, and obviously it has the speed bonus, which we're more concerned with. Now, when you're building in this game, once you're building roads, you might get used to using the hotkey N just to place down that road, but this will always be dirt road. So once you're in tier 2, what you may want to do is go to building and go to the walls and roads section, and then you can select right here and you can build the cobbled road instead. Now you'll see here, if I click on this right here, this section of road that's been upgraded, this is cobbled road, so it is the same thing, and if you want that extra speed bonus, that's what you'll need to use. As you can see here, guys, 8 people have turned up, and it's always very tempting to accept them, but I'm on 57 out of 68, so I could technically house them. However, it wouldn't leave leave us a lot of room. And as I said, to do a new housing area, I think we need a whole new area because our market is getting pretty used up here. We also don't have a ton of food at this stage, and in a few months it is going to be winter. So again, this comes down to not expanding too quickly, and I am actually going to turn them away. So anyway, going back to the roads, we've got the cobbled road here. As you see, it does take 20 stone per 100 meters, but in the long term, you should hopefully get more than that. And I'm going to build this out to about here, just like this, and then go back to the build menu, and under resources, I want to get one of these things going on, which is a work camp. So I'm going to place that work camp here like this. So it's near a lot of like wood and rock and stuff like that. And that's the resources that we're interested in getting from this thing. So let's get that built up, and then I'll show you in action in a second. Now back under the housing area, it can be a good idea to get one of these built. This is a temporary shelter. So this can be used by the people working in the work camp, and it means that they won't have to return all the way back to their house each time. They can just come out and use this to return here. Basically just going to speed things up for any work areas you have that are far out of town. So that's likely to be things like the work camps, of course, but also if you're harvesting, like say this clay deposit here, or later on in the game some gold or iron, then having a little sheltered housing can be good. All right, we have an impending blizzard and firewood is low. If I press P, you've still got these 19 people here laboring, so it's definitely time to go back into our firewood splitter, and I'm going to add 2 people in here. The reason I'm adding 2 is because I left this a bit late. I forgot to keep an eye on this firewood after we got it to a stage where no one was working on it. So I'm going to get that back up, and once it's back up around maybe 50 to 100, then I'll just drop that back down to 1 person, and hopefully that 1 person will sustain the population. But obviously if he doesn't, then we'll change that around again. Okay, our work camp has been built. Hooray! So let's have a look at this. So again, up here we can move this work area to wherever we want it to be. I think, you know, where it is right now is probably a reasonable location. Just keep it centered on the hut there. And we've got 2 people working in here, and they're going to do a ratio of stone and wood. So you can tell them to do like, you know, almost entirely stone or almost entirely wood or anything in between. And if you drag it all the way, you can tell them to do like entirely wood or entirely stone. What I'm going to do for now is just set it to 2 to 1. So they're doing twice as much wood as they are stone, because we are going to need both, but wood is a little more important for us. And I like to keep the mature trees only on here, because this is going to mean that they're not going to harvest the little trees and basically clear the entire area. Now in building, if you go to decorations, you can also start planting down some trees. You'll see it does cost 1 gold to do so, but at the moment we have a good amount of that. So I'm going to go ahead here and just select some different trees to be planted in these areas. I'm just going to kind of spam click them all around here. Obviously I'm being a little like keeping an eye on the gold that we've got, but let's just get a load planted. And I'm going to chuck in like a few maple trees as well, keep a few of those nearby, just keep a bit of variety here. And finally, let's put in some oak trees too. So they've got a different variety of all different trees, and you see that all up we're probably spending here maybe like 50 gold on all this. So it is a lot, but long term this is going to pay us back by the fact that we're going to have so many trees near this work camp that we can then harvest. And talking of harvest, we managed to do our harvest here of the peas, and you can see that we harvested 432. And it looks like our estimated yield was very good this year. We actually got 576 out of 528. So doing that bit of farm work first was probably worth the time. Now we can start looking at next year, of course, because we're going to be heading into that soon. And with our weed and rockiness the way it is, we can actually do 2 harvests next year. So I'm going to start by doing the beans right here, because we want to harvest those during the warmer months as they have a fantastic heat tolerance. And then we're going to add the peas in afterwards, because again, as I said before, they can be harvested in the colder months. So let's put it at the exact same time of year, because that seemed to do really well for us last year. So let's just re-emulate that. So that should really help our food next year. We'll have a load of farms done there that are going to be hopefully bringing in a good harvest. Now firewood is unfortunately becoming a real problem for us through this winter, so don't do what I did. Make sure you keep an eye on the firewood situation and don't let it get all the way down to 0. And hopefully, you know, with the 2 people we've got in there working at the moment, we can start to recover this and warm everybody back up a little. Will Kysen's town be able to produce enough firewood? Will this crazy investment into trees be worth it? And will this coat be enough to stop this guy freezing to death while he fishes during the winter? Find out in the next Let's Play episode. All jokes aside, guys, I hope you enjoy the Let's Play series. It's been really fun to make, and there's so much left to do on here. So if you are enjoying it, then feel free to get involved. You know, make suggestions down in comments or join my Discord or anything like that. The link is in description. But for now, I just want to say thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.